Yeah, remember the name. Jas Takhar, best in the game. Mamba mentality in his own lane. So better pay attention to what he be saying. Get the message, ain't no question. Giving advice for any investment. Welcome to the broadcast, the Jas Takhar Podcast.
As a lot of you know, and you've heard me and seen me speak about the importance of, if you can't actually get to the table where the conversations are being had of what you want to accomplish, i.e. you want to build a bigger business, you want to become the best fashion designer, you want to be the best chef. If you physically can't get to that table yet, my advice has always been and will continue to always be that bring coffee to those tables. And how do you do that? Well, there's a myriad of reasons. Hence why I wanted to bring on the two people that in my life I've actually seen do it very, very effectively. I'm going to introduce someone that has never been on the Jas Takhar podcast, and he might be thinking that I'm saying this lightly, but it really is an honor to have him here. I'm going to introduce him in a couple of seconds here, but first, why don't we introduce someone that has been on the podcast too many times, the one and only Laura Stewart. Just came back from Paris really, really quickly. How was the trip? How was everything in Paris?
I just ate and drank.
We can tell.
One should do.
You did a lot of eating there. Yes.
Like a
lot
of wearing black today.
Is it? Well, that's the fashionista in you, I guess. Nice. Does it actually help? Because then I'm going to do more of it, like wear more black.
We should save that for Jas. He can let us know if.
Well, I wanted to wear black, but Jas doesn't let me because he says that I blend into the back wall here. But Laura, I know you're also excited about the guy that's sitting next to us, Mr. Luc Lising, a.k.a. the Phenom. What's up, brother?
All I gotta say is the tables have turned.
In what sense?
We finally made it 4 years later. I remember, instead of me, because 4 years ago, what a lot of people don't know is I was your assistant. And one of the biggest roles I had was getting you guests on your podcast and also getting you on other people's podcasts. So this has always been my thing. And now 3.5, 4 years later, I'm in front of the camera. So it's great to be here.
Well, and you deserve it, brother. You, as I mentioned slightly in the intro, like I saw you take that strategy. And maybe it was because, and you'll talk about it, don't let me put words in your mouth, but I'm sure a lot of it had to do with the fact that because you were bringing people on the podcast, getting me on podcast, watching and listening to a lot of those conversations, you heard me talk about the importance of bringing coffees to the table. And what that really means is like, look, put up your fucking hand as much as possible. And it doesn't matter if you're, at that time you were 19?
19.
If you're 19 or you're 27 right now, kind of where my target market kind of sits, it's like 26 to about 37. That's kind of my target market. But even if you're, 48 and 56, you still got a lot of time. You're kind of like half, you're at halftime. You might not be able to take the risk and work for free. Essentially, that's what bring coffees to the table really does mean, that you might need to work for free for a little bit, which you both did. But even if you're at 52, you might not be able to do it for 2-3 years. You could do that for 6 months to start learning and start hearing and start watching someone else or a team do something at a high level that you can just actually pick up on. Success leaves clues. Elto, I mean, you were slightly older when you kind of came on the team, but you were the one like always putting up your hand like, I got that. Like, oh, you guys need something dropped off at the house? Got that. Guys, do you literally need some coffee or some food? The food, I get why, because you knew that you were probably going to eat with us.
Myself.
Well, you're going to eat with us once we ordered it. It doesn't really matter where you are in terms of age. Yes, if you're younger, you're going to be able to possibly do it for longer because you can take that risk on a little bit more.
If you are a little bit older like I was, it gives you not just an opportunity to learn, it also gives you an opportunity to showcase your specific talents and your experiences, and it gives you the opportunity to showcase how those experiences might lend itself well to whoever you're trying to get your foot in the door with. So for me, like I might not have had sales experience, but I had a lot of other experience that I said, look, just like put me at the table and I'll show you how I think I can help grow this team and how I can help you grow your business.
Well, fast forward in the real estate company, which is REC Canada, you're the VP on From the Ground Up, which is a training company for real estate agents, where we're really trying to make like this ripple effect happen in terms of positivity and really giving yourself the permission to be yourself. I mean, you're a co-founder, co-owner. Like, sometimes I don't like, I guess, admitting that you're a business partner in it now. But like, who would have thunk it back then that you would have not only been able to put up your hands and, you know, what you brought to the table for us was definitely not from the sales perspective. I had
no value to give to you there.
Yeah, which is different than Lucre, and we're going to talk about that. But like, it was like, I got that shit handled. Like, I'll figure that out. But God knows we suck at systems. And we always kind of have. And now we're a lot better because you kind of took over as the systems queen. Like, if you didn't put up your hand, we never would have, in my opinion, really even got to the place we are from a branding perspective. Because on top of all of that, we were never looking for someone to brand or rebrand our colors and our logos and our reputation online and get into the world of podcasting. But you brought that to the table because you had a degree in it, right?
I think you just, if you go into saying like, I want to try to help people, I want to learn something new, maybe it's just watching for a little bit, like bringing the coffees and then observing and saying like, where are there holes in this company? Where do these people seem to struggle? And do I have a specific skill set that I think can fill those holes? Or just, even if you don't have the skill set, like oftentimes people are too busy. Like, you're out running your business, salespeople we're reactive, we're dealing with clients. We don't always have the time to put pen to paper and really like write systems down, for example, which is what I helped you guys with. But that was the one thing that I knew I could do while you guys were busy running the actual business, that like, maybe I can make this a little bit easier for next time. And so I think that there's great opportunity for people at all times, no matter what age, to your point, whether you're super young like Luc was, or whether you're a little bit more experienced like I was. I'm going to call it experience.
I love that. I like how you did that. I like how you did that.
Then you just find a way to get your foot in the door and see where you can find a nice little cozy place for yourself where your specific skill set actually can shine.
See, now for the people who are listening who actually run the business and are making the decision of somebody coming to your table or not, very important segue here, because as we were mentioning that Laura didn't really bring us a lot of value from a sales perspective. When Luc called, we weren't even looking for sales.
Tell the story.
Well, 100%. I got to tell the story from my perspective, but then I want to hear it from Luc's as well, because, you know, I got to tell it from what I felt was really going on at that time. But this was going back to now 2019, Luc? COVID 2020, is it 19 or late 18?
I met you Jan 6, 2020.
You met me Jan 6, 2020, so late 2019.
Yeah, but I probably called you end of 2019.
Exactly, right around December. So if you called me around December, come around like literally a week to 2 weeks before you called me, I made the final decision based on what Laura and Tyler specifically were saying to me that, okay, Jas, enough is enough. No bringing on people to the table, and no bringing on and bringing to the table people that just kind of want to be in our world because they see us on social. And
we had been doing it for like a couple years already. We kept bringing in new people. They liked what we were doing. They wanted to get their foot in the door. But unfortunately, what happens is new people, they do take a lot of time, right? You do have to train people. You do have to give them your attention. And they're there to learn something from you. And so it's only like they're giving you their time and their efforts.
And what did you see at that time as we kind of go through the journey of how Luc came into our world? Like, what was it that you and Ty maybe spoke when I wasn't around or behind my back or whatever it was that said, okay, we can't let this keep happening where people keep taking my time.
Jas, you were just being pulled in so many directions. Like, we couldn't get you on a phone call to call a client because you'd be helping with somebody, or you would go missing for hours because people would stop you on the way to the washroom and they would pick your brain. And it was difficult to get work done. So it was a bit at the detriment of the business. So at one point, I think Tyler and I were just like, we got to slow things down. Like, we need Jas to sit in the seat and actually help us transact, because you were the salesperson. You were our only real sales guy making sales calls. And Tyler and I were there for support for sure. But we needed like your butt in the seat making those calls. And so we were like, no more. Like, we actually looked at you and said, no more.
And I agreed. And I completely agreed. I said, we're done. Okay, I'm fine. Give me like I'll wait this out for another 6 months to a year, and then we get a phone call, and I'm speaking on speaker, And the person on the line says to me, "Hi, I've been referred to you by a gentleman. Big shout out to Mike Seal in Windsor, who we do a lot of business with our clients that are looking for property in Windsor. And he gave you my number, Luke, and you call me and you say, look, I'm thinking about joining a team and I'm down to work for free. And I don't.
And he was a new agent.
He was a new agent. I think you were licensed for 6 months or something.
6 months in.
6 months.
Yeah.
We won't shout out the company that you were with because it doesn't really matter.
I will.
Okay, you can do whatever you want. And so you call, and I say to you on the line, "Sorry, bro, I just promised."
And I'm doing this in the background.
Yeah,
like, no,
so
don't take him.
Okay.
Don't take him.
So I'm glad that you're saying this.
Oh, I was giving you
sometimes I hear different versions of this story. Okay, good.
Yeah.
You could tell how important Luke is in everything we do with REC Canada as well as for From the Ground Up. And Laura's giving me that there's no way you're doing this. And I say, okay, no problem. Like, hey, sorry, brother, can't do this. And you said something to me. Do you remember what you said to me?
Yeah.
What'd you say?
I said, you're making a mistake if you don't meet me.
Yeah. And I could tell in his voice that he was, I'm probably, at that time, I'm 38 or something like that. And I'm like, this is like a child speaking to me. And I said to you, I was like, what the fuck did you just say? And you repeated yourself. Like, I think you're actually, with all due respect, you did say that. You said, with all due respect, I think you're making one of the biggest mistakes ever. And you should meet me.
Yeah.
And that's when
well, because it was on speakerphone. And that's what, like, I'm typing away at my computer thinking Jas is just going to shut it down. And I look up at Jas and I'm like, that's different. You don't hear that every day. Like, that level of confidence.
Yeah.
And coming from someone like that, with the passion and the energy that you were giving. And then I looked at Jas because Jas is like, come on, let me take, like, I got to meet this guy.
I got to see this kid.
I got to see, like, I don't hear people like this often. And then I was like, fine. Like, you know, sure. Because I hadn't heard that either. So I said, sure, bring him in.
Quickly to bring that kind of story to a wrap in, because I really want to ask where the confidence came from. When I said to you, done, come meet me tomorrow morning, be here for 9 o'clock. You showed up at like 8:15, dressed to the nines, right? Like suit. I think you actually wore a red polo shirt, a sweater, with a tie under, like dress shirt,
something
tie.
like that.
You came really, really prepared. Yeah. And so, you know, as they say, the rest is history. We'll talk about where you are in our organization and why you're actually on this couch, which is also to talk about the importance of whoever's listening right now. Like, you have to, in my opinion, take on this strategy, because you're going to find out where fucking Luke is right now as a 22-year-old?
22 now.
I always forget, sorry. As a 22-year-old, when you hear him speak, you're going to, like, first and foremost, you're going to realize that, holy shit, like, this guy's really mature for his age. But where did the confidence come from, brother? Like, at that age, at 19, even though you didn't put a real estate deal, you didn't know your head from your fucking ass, yet you still had the kahunas to speak to me like that.
You know, I think what I have now is confidence, because when I speak to our clients, when I do these presentations, these podcasts, most people can tell that I'm not coming from fluff. It's legit. I know what I'm talking about. I actually have done the business that I've done. At the time, it wasn't confidence. I think at the time I was just so hurt, beat up, and just desperate that it came off as confidence. I don't know where it came from, but man, I remember that like it was yesterday. I just remember the mental state that I was in. 6 months, I made the calls, right? I made the cold calls, but I was getting told to F off repeatedly day after day. And I was working part-time at minimum wage jobs at the time. Like, just think of that. And I guess when I approached you, it was just like, just give me a fucking shot. It was just straight desperation. That's all that it was. And I guess that's where it kind of came off as confidence, because I really needed it. Yeah. That was my ticket. Because so Mike didn't even give me your phone number.
Okay.
He just says, speak to a guy named Jas Takhar. He'll take care of you. I'm like, okay. At the time, I didn't know proper business etiquette. Like, hey, can you make an introduction? I was just like, okay, let me Google Jazz. Jas, and then I see music. Then I'm like, oh, okay.
Never gonna find this person.
Like, how do I spell Takhar? And then boom, I call a couple of my Indian friends and they tell me how to spell it correctly.
Fucking resourceful. Love
it. Yeah, and then so I find you. I email your Roy LePage email.
Okay.
But no one opens those.
Yeah.
So you didn't respond for like 2 weeks.
Okay.
And I'm like, so let me email his personal email. Let me call his office and I find your phone number. Like I was trying repeatedly, but it was bouncing because you don't open your Royal LePage emails. And then by the time I got a hold of you, I was just so beat, man. Like I remember feeling just beat.
Yeah, it goes to show too, right? Because sometimes I get messages on DM or I get an email and people are like, man, I've reached out to you. You haven't got back. Realize when you are reaching out to somebody, and I'm not trying to be cool here, but I'm busy and there's a lot of stuff going on. I sometimes don't even get to sit with my crew often enough, let alone sometimes I don't get to take care of my personal life and things that I got to meet, like people got to meet there. Is that when you reach out to somebody, just because they didn't reach back to you, you can't take that as like, oh my God, like you suck, the person that you're reaching out to, or B, you can't stop there. Like there's a classy way of doing it. Because I didn't even see any of those. I didn't know if you were harassing me or not, but you never stopped. And so I can't tell you the amount of times that it's worked in my favor. People always ask me the question around like, how did you get the Gary V's on your podcast? How did you get Grant Cardone? How'd you get Patrick Bet-David? How'd you get Robert Kiyosaki? Big shout out to Luke because he helped me get a lot of those people because he was consistently following up. But Laura, you know this more than anyone. Like we followed up with Gary for 1.5 years. We followed up with Grant Cardone for 1.5 years. That's like in between, like collectively for all the names I just mentioned and the other hundreds of big names that we've had, I'm talking about like hundreds upon hundreds of follow-ups and no's.
I think people think that when people don't respond, it's a no.
Yes.
It's not a no. It's just, I didn't get back to you. It might be a no in their mind because they're like, oh, I don't want this person or whatever. But the tenacity, I've gotten a lot of opportunities in my life just simply because I followed up. Yeah. And I kept following up. And people think, it's, well, how many times? And you always say this, and I love this. It's like you continue to follow up until they say yes or tell you to fuck off.
Yep.
And those are the only, otherwise, if they haven't told you either of those things, keep following up.
Yeah, because there's no reason not to, right? Unless, like, if they say fuck off, that means like, okay, stop. Like, I don't even want to.
Now you're harassing.
Yeah, now you're harassing me. And that's where you stop. And now, look, I don't think you DM everybody or private message them on LinkedIn or email them or call them every single day. But you need to find different ways to bring them value, right? And one of those ways, as Luke did, was like just by saying something different, i.e., I think this is one of the biggest mistakes you're making, that got my attention, right? And so I think the other big lesson in this, and this is really, now this is for my 20 and 30-year-olds, I got to tell you, I watch a lot of them and I fucking love them. Jas knows how I feel about them. Nikki knows how I feel. They are so afraid of the phone. And what you did differently and why you're sitting on this couch and why you are who you are is because you're not afraid of picking up the phone. Mm-hmm. Everyone else around me in that age group, and I'm not trying to put everybody kind of in the same kind of a bucket, so to speak, but I got to tell you, they resort in their minds to texting and emailing first.
Obviously, yeah.
Right? And the problem with that is that you can't get that connection through a text message, an email, or a DM. In fact, what I would even recommend to people, what sticks out to me if you're trying to get a hold of me, you don't want to call me because you don't have my number, voice note a DM to me. That gets my attention. Because I got to press play. Now I get to hear the person's voice. So taking that to the next level, like rather than just writing it.
Specifically, he was like applying to like learn about real estate sales.
Yes.
Like, it also makes sense in particular here.
But I think
for anything I totally get,
right,
but like specifically here, like you'd be surprised how many real estate agents also don't want to pick up.
100%. Yeah. Like I have people email me, all real estate agents all the time because they're trying to kind of pick my brain. And I'm actually quite easy to find as from a realtor to a realtor. You kind of know how to get a hold of me. It's not that hard. You just call the real estate office and you page us and we get a text message and we can call back. You can get transferred directly. But yet they don't do that. They send an email. And emails, they go into spams. Like, to your point, I didn't even know I had a Royal LePage fucking email address. You know what I mean? Like, who knows those ones, right?
Yeah. Did I just remind you that you had an email?
Yes, you did. And I'm actually going to go back to
like,
Mel and remind. I don't have it forwarded. I don't have it forwarded. So I got to set that up. So if there's like one thing that people can take from this podcast already, please pick up the phone and call people. Pick up the phone and call them because you're already differentiating yourself from anybody else, majority of other people, because they're going to get lost in the texting and everything. Luker, let's take it back before the 19 and before you getting your real estate license. What were you doing? Like, what were you up to? You said some part-time jobs, minimum wage and stuff like that. So just to give some people some context, like part of the journey of Luc.
Yeah, so I kind of got into the entrepreneurship space around the age of 17, 18-ish, my last year of high school. I wanted to become a physical education teacher all throughout high school. I love sports, hockey. We were talking about hockey. I've grown up fighting, taekwondo, boxing.
Oh, cool.
So I was always in that fitness kind of space, but
I cannot imagine you as a gym teacher. I'm sorry.
I know.
Go on.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm a better salesperson than I am a gym teacher. But I just felt very, I wouldn't use the word depressed, but it's the closest thing I can just to describe it to people for them to understand it. I felt depressed and, again, just beat up and hurt throughout high school because I just didn't feel passionate about going down that route of going to school 9 to 5. I hate it when people tell me what to do. Yeah. Like especially people I don't respect. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I in high school, my last year of high school, I was absent 122 times. 122 times. I never showed up to school.
How many school days are in a year?
Yeah, like, and how many absences can you have?
Probably like 250. Yeah. So I was gone.
But I have a funny feeling you got along with the teachers and they gave you a little bit of a, they gave you some like a longer leash to work with.
Yeah. And you want to know what's so funny? Except for grade 9, my last 3, so grades 10, 11, 12, I've always graduated with honors.
Okay.
On honor roll, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
I don't even know what it's fucking called.
Honors, yeah.
And I always, because I went to Mary Ward, my school was self-directed, so you can fast track your own work. I always finished early.
I don't doubt that.
I always finished early.
I know you. Yeah.
Yeah. I've always finished, grades 10, 11, 12, always finished early and always had an average over 80%. So I wasn't an idiot. I wasn't stupid. I just didn't want to fucking do it.
Yes.
So I started a marketing agency for realtors at the time. So we did a lot of lead generation, Facebook ads, Instagram ads for realtors.
Why? Like, what in your mind at 17? You're like,
I Googled,
realtors.
this is what I did. I Googled how to make money online.
Oh, got it.
How to not go to college and still be successful. Yeah. Like I
what
started
comes
from
up?
scratch.
Like market, real estate
Paid
agent.
surveys. Do surveys and get paid.
Got it.
You know those ones where you get like 50 cents a survey?
Yes. And you get paid like $50 or something like that. Yeah.
Or the most basic one. Offer website design services and then outsource it on Fiverr.
Yeah.
It's just the most basic shit. So then one of those get rich quick schemes just so happened to be lead generation for realtors. I learned quickly that it wasn't get rich quick. It was a lot of work to actually service these people, to get them to trust you. So I did that all throughout high school. And afterwards, I decided to get my license for a couple of reasons.
Yeah, talk to me about that.
For one, it's because I kind of needed to. My parents had some money tied in RESPs.
Yep.
RESPs, and the only way for them to get that money out was if I went to school. And we've had countless nights of arguments of how I'm not going to school. I'm not going to college. I'm not going to uni. Whatever you have in the account, I'll double it. Like I would say stupid shit like that, and I had no money to my name. And they just presented to me like, if you go get your license, it's not really going to school. It's online. You can do it quick, and we get our money back.
The real estate license.
The real estate license. Yeah, I should clarify that. And I was like, all right, whatever, just to keep you guys.
Oh, that
happy.
Counts. To get your money
I didn't know
back
that.
At the time it did. I don't know if
Cool.
it does anymore, but it's 8 months later I was licensed. Right after high school, 8 months later I was licensed.
Yeah.
And
that goes to show right there. You fast track that because I think they give you 2 years to do it.
Yeah.
18 months minimum, but they give you at least, I think, a minimum of 18 months up to 2 years, and you fast tracked that right away.
I did it.
So to your point earlier about being a sharp kid, you've always been that.
Yeah, I've always been on top. In grade 9, I actually almost failed it. So I was like, okay, that's just not happening. I'm 14 years old. In my life, it's like your parents teach you whatever you do in school is going to dictate what happens for the rest of your life. So I always try to be on top of my shit. When I realized at 14, oh my goodness, almost failed.
So the conversation with your parents really quickly, was that tough though? Like you said, countless nights. Like was that arguments from the perspective of like, Lucci, I don't give a shit. You're going to school. I got you, bro. You're going to school. Or was it? No, how was that relationship with your parents?
It started off that way, but when they realized that I was, no, mom and dad, I'm not going to school, and that's firm, then they realized, all right, well, there's no convincing this kid. Let's just find an alternate solution.
Got it. So shout out to them, man. Like, they didn't push it too much, kind of.
Oh, they fucking did.
Oh, that
so
one point.
I think it just goes to show, like, see, this is part of that confidence, because I think most kids, a lot of kids, if their parents give that much pushback, you think, well, my parents must know more than I do. Although a lot of teenagers don't think their parents know more than they do. But like, you respect your parents, they've worked hard for you. They're telling you to go to school. Like at some point you think you'd question and say, shit, should I be going to school? Like maybe my parents know more than I do. But you had the confidence to like stand up and say, no, I'm going with my gut on this.
So I do believe my parents know more than I do because they've done a lot more than I've ever accomplished. Like they raised this sexy ass 22-year-old successful on the #1 teaming for Royal LePage. So they've done, I've yet to raise any kids, you know. I might have a couple.
I met your father too. He's awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. But for certain things they don't. I mean, their information's outdated. For them it's get buy your house, go down to traditional 9 to 5 and then work your way up that ladder. But now today you can get rich like this. And I'm not looking for this. I'm looking for okay, can I do this consistently without having to go through that 9 to 5 rat race? I hate using those terms because that's a traditional, you know, like terms that people use. I don't want to use the Matrix either because Andrew Tate like started that thing. But but people know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. No, right? It is caught into that 9 to 5.
And I don't want to go.
But I don't think there's anything wrong with it for like in general, but I think it's wrong for some people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like my mother did the 9 to 5. It was just happened to be in a factory. She probably wanted more, but she wasn't willing to take the risk. You know, she also had 3 boys and coming from a different country. There you go, right? I actually want to ask you a question, Toby, because I was just sitting here looking at both of you, and it's kind of cool, right? Like Luke and I are kind of similar in the sense of school, and like we knew we weren't going to be able to go get. Do they call it higher education? I guess it is. Like when you go post-secondary.
Well, he could do it. He didn't want to. Sounds like he could do it.
Was that a shot at me?
Yeah,
I think it was a shot.
There was a shot at me there. I felt the fucking shot.
I didn't hear you saying you had all the best grades.
You could have done it with ChatGPT.
I could do it now with ChatGPT. 100%. No, they were honored to have me.
Right,
That's what the difference was. Right. But you obviously went a different route. Like school was it. Like, did you ever have a conversation with your parents or even in yourself to say, I don't want to do this school thing? Or was Laura always like, I'm going to school. I'm going to get, because you always got good grades and you took it seriously.
Luke said
you kept
something
going
that
to
I was
school.
like, oh shit, I didn't have that mentality when I was younger. Like you said, you know, it's not like I don't like being told what to do. It's just, I don't like being told what to do from people I don't respect. For me, I just respected everyone who was older than me.
Respect your elders.
Automatically respected the counselor's opinion. Where I think Luke would have probably said like,
fuck yourself.
Like, what's the counselor saying? And like, what have you experienced that led you to this conclusion? Well, I didn't have that critical thinking skill at that time. So I just said, well, I want to be successful. And everyone around me is telling me that this is what we also had to do. I'm also a lot older than Luke. So at the time, it's not like you just did a quick Google search that was like how to make money. That wasn't really an option. Yeah. So at that time, the options were go to school specifically for science. That's what we were told to do. You want to make money, go to school for science. So I went to school for science. Like I wanted to be successful. So you say success leaves clues. There was a lot of clues telling me to go do that.
And I actually think at that time it was that like you didn't have the Zuckerbergs and you know definitely not the Elon Musks of the world now. Elon Musk
entrepreneurship
is a very
wasn't
smart boy.
Idolized then either.
Say that again.
Like the professions that were really idolized at that time were like becoming a lawyer, becoming a doctor, like working for the government, but like having a safety net. Like that was, and also that's a circumstance of the time, the decade that you grew up in and like what's going on in the world, where now like people are a lot more willing to be risky. But like when I grew up, it was like you got to be out of your house by the time you're 18. Like what are you doing living at home? Like that was something that people really respected. That is not respected as much anymore. So now people say, well, now if I work, I have money that I can go play with and be risky. Every dollar I made went to my rent. So like it wasn't really an option. So I think, circumstance really
plays a role.
Guides you.
For sure. Luke, now sales. So you get into sales. You have your 6-month stint. What wasn't working at that time for you? Like, I know what's working now. You're sitting next to me. And I don't mean that as a joke, actually. I know why. Like, you're doing well because you have the raw skill, but you have me overwatching it, and we'll talk about that. But in that first 6 months, what wasn't working for you?
I think during those first 6 months, the only thing I did right was the repetition of making calls. because I knew I had to put in the work. I've always had the work ethic. I've always had the attitude. I just didn't know how to do or approach sales or business or anything of that sort, which is why the first thing I did was sought after a mentor, because I knew that person would put me along the right path. Things like people not trusting me. They can hear that I don't know what I'm talking about. I didn't know what an APS, I didn't know what working with a realtor was, none of that stuff. And I wasn't getting the support or the guidance from the brokerage I was originally with. So, yeah, I mean, I think the only thing I actually did well was repetition, because I was always picking up the phone. And mind you, months prior, I ran a lead generation company.
Yeah.
I knew how to get the leads, right? So I had, at the end of those 6 months, I had 2,000 people in my database. I racked up a lot of leads, a lot of leads. But how do I convert those 2,000? 1,800 to be exact.
Yeah.
At 1,800. But not a single one of them did a deal. It took me 18 months to do a deal with one of those 1,800.
And was that like a lease or something?
No, it was an actual buy.
Okay.
So it took me a lot of people here in the business, they see realtors making so much money. It took me 18 months to get a first taste of my first dollar.
Now, when you got over to us, you didn't go right into sales.
Yeah.
So what I think you did very, very well from the outside, and both Laura and I and Tyler, we talked about it all the time, was you just sat there very quietly. Like you were my assistant, but you were always watching and listening, but you weren't really saying much, because I think you were absorbing the conversations. Is that right for me to say? Like if you can go back to that, start of 2020, we didn't get even into COVID, because I know what you and I were doing during COVID. But like before that first week, it's like you fit, like you literally fit like a glove from the second you came in to our table. But what do you kind of remember of that time?
So I want to bring up something that you mentioned, and I want to make it very clear. You said that when I first joined, all I did was sit there and I absorbed everything like a sponge. If you look at this conversation, it's recorded. Not once throughout this conversation did I ever interrupt to give my opinion. Yeah. Till this day, I'm a sponge.
Yeah.
And my advice, and I said this at a workshop, I said, most people's problems is that they're brutally arrogant. It's not that they're not using the scripts. It's just they don't listen to people that are successful telling them what to do. We tell them to put on events. We tell them to say this on the phone. They still don't do it. Right? So me, after still doing hundreds of deals, I'll sit here humbly knowing that you two are still the experts. And I'll still keep my mouth shut to hear and listen what you guys have to say. So, I mean, that's what I remember.
And people have forgot that. And we'll continue in a second, but people have forgot the importance of understanding that you have one mouth and 2 ears.
2 ears.
You need to listen twice as much as you speak, especially in sales. And maybe because this industry, like the actual sales industry, is so close to my heart. And it's something that, like, as you guys, Laura specifically was doing so well in school, you at a young age were with the social media agency and Jas and Nikki, like doing their thing from a media perspective and recording and editing. For me, it was always sales. Right? Like that's all I've ever done. And so now when I'm speaking about it, I do come from a perspective of like, I know what the fuck I'm talking about. Like I've been through the ups and downs of a very, very frothy market in terms of everybody wants to buy your product and service, i.e. real estate. And I've seen holy shit, nobody wants to touch you as a real estate agent with a 6-foot pole because of X, Y, and Z reasons. And I've gotten out of those markets. And so when somebody comes across into my world that is just willing to listen, and then most importantly, take that and then actually watch them execute, because I can count on one hand, 2 of them are sitting on this couch, and there is the Tylers and a couple of others that have actually taken what we've been teaching and execute on it.
Well, we had a lot of people that came into our room. Again, as I mentioned earlier, that's why we didn't want anyone new. Who were like, no, I'm going to do the work and I'm going to do what you say. But there was always a lot of pushback. There was always a lot of opinion giving, which it's not like we're not open to other people's opinions, but it's like if you came to learn from us, then why don't you just try it on for size? But I think people's ego gets in the way. And Luc's ego never got in the way. I remember once you told him to I want you to listen to, maybe it was your podcast or some sales scripts. You guys were recording Jas making phone calls. And you were like, I want you to listen to them. Most people would have been like, yeah, I'll go listen to them on my free time. Luc would come in the next day and be like, I listened to it 4 times yesterday. Like he went home, he did his
And you would
homework.
regurgitate it back to
And
me
he
and ask, and then you would ask questions about it.
And then it would say, can I pick your brain for another hour? And then record another thing and do the same thing day in and day out. Like, people think it comes easily. Like, you put in the reps again and again and again. Like, you've earned this more than almost anyone that I've watched come through our program.
100%. It's why he's my right-hand guy when it comes to specifically right now the pre-construction stuff, which that pre-construction masterclass that you and I did, and Jas, do me a favor, just put it right here. So if you're a real estate agent, this is the 37-minute video you need to watch as a real estate agent if you actually want to sell pre-construction condos. Laura and I did this for our clients until we were done afterwards. We looked at Jas and said, holy shit, real estate agents are going to go nuts on this, because we literally just gave them how we speak to our clients, which allows us to sell anywhere from 150 to 175 pre-construction condos a year. What Luc did with it, and I thought he was bullshitting a little bit. Like, he told me, he's like, no, Jas, I've listened to this thing like 73 times. Like, is it something like that? Or am I wrong?
Something ridiculous.
Some like ridiculous number. And then I started testing him and throwing shit at him. And he's literally talking about exactly how you speak about the 10-day due diligence period, Laura, or the difference between occupancy and registration. You could tell this man brainwashed himself. Brainwashed. Is that what you did, Luc? Like, again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, because I know majority of people who are going to be watching this and listening to this are real estate agents. And no fucking around. The guy sitting beside me as a 22-year-old does approximately, I think you're upwards now of you have to be north of $100 million worth of real estate sold.
I think I'm over 200 now.
So you've counted.
I've counted it.
Okay.
Sorry.
So
yeah, I counted.
22 years old, has sold over $200 million worth of real estate. Nikki, that's probably somewhere where you want to title this thing, okay? Because... And one of the main reasons, in my opinion, aside from the work ethic, because I know a lot of people with good work ethic, I know a lot of people that are willing to actually listen, but you not only have the work ethic, not only do you listen, but then you take it and then actually do the work with it. Like, you actually execute. And that pre-construction masterclass has to be, in my opinion, the tool and the resource that you used to do the north of $200 million in sales.
100%. And watching that video alone wasn't going to put money in my pocket. So I had to pick up the phones. I had to get the deals done. I mean, now I'm in a position where I'm grateful to say that I'm also now hosting the webinars and the events for our clients, right? So now that's just another layer. I step in with a little bit of, how should I say, a faster heart rate, because now it's a new challenge that I've yet to take on. So now I'm a little bit nervous when I do these events.
You did our first webinar a couple of weeks ago. Yes, I'll also get you that video as well, because I actually want people to watch this as well. We'll put it in the description, actually, Nikki, so people can actually see the first webinar ever that Luc did on his own, which was probably going back about a month ago. And I remember speaking to you the night before. I also spoke to you probably about an hour before. When I spoke to you the night before, I could tell that you weren't really, like, yeah, you were nervous. And I think, Laura, you and I talk about this, and you explain it probably way better than I do. Like, the brain doesn't really know the difference, right? Like, are you nervous? Are you anxious? Like, you speak about
excited,
that.
Yeah.
Are you excited? And that was him.
It all feels the same.
It all feels the same, right? And you remember the first time you did a webinar, the first time you did a podcast. And so Luc was in that kind of setting on the night before. But when I spoke to him an hour before, like, I have the text message somewhere on my phone here. He said to me, Jas, I got you. Like, I got you covered here. I'm confident. I'm ready to go. Let me just get started. And if you watch this webinar, who he did with one of our main developers, okay, beautiful, beautiful soul, Erin Miller, and you could tell, like, she was even saying, like, yeah, I kind of miss Jas not doing this with me, yada yada yada. But like,
you were pretty great.
Like, I gotta say, like, there wasn't that big of a gap. Yeah. You know what I mean?
You know what's interesting is I'm almost hearing it. Like, I feel like I'm putting a trend together here. Is that I know that Luc would have been nervous, right? Like, but you say that you're confident, or you say things with confidence. Like, I think a big part of what you came to the table with is a mental strength that you've obviously developed, or your parents helped you with. I'm not sure where it came from reading books. I know you've always been into, like, personal development and stuff like that. It's like, if you say something enough times to yourself, it becomes true. And what Luc doesn't do is do what a lot of people do, which is, I don't know if I'm good enough, and I don't know if I can do it, and what if I make a mistake? What if I fuck up? he just immediately goes for the, I got this.
Yeah.
Whether or not he should say that, like people would say, well, what experience do you have to tell you that you do have it? He's none, but he just believes in himself. And even if he doesn't believe in himself, he'll say it anyway, and it becomes true.
Well,
it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
True, yeah.
1,000%.
Or at least that's what I noticed on the outside.
Well, the best-selling book in the personal development world is a book called Think and Grow Rich. It's by the late, great Napoleon Hill. And there's 13 principles in there. It's always funny that there's 13 elements of the success table. There's 13 principles in the best-selling book. And one of them, to your point, Laura, is called auto-suggestion. Okay? And that is the principle of consistently repeating to yourself what you're looking into attracting into your world, because you need to take it from the conscious mind and go into the subconscious mind to attract those opportunities that are already around you. You just now need to see those. I always use the example of it's why when you pick up a brand new car, happens to you, Laura, happens to everybody. You see that car everywhere now. And some are like, oh my God, it's such a quinky dink that I'm seeing the same car. They just popped out of nowhere.
This just happened to me today.
I'm not
at the
surprised.
Tim Hortons
Yeah.
with Luke. Because there's a shoe brand. I don't know if it's called Veja, Veja, that everyone was wearing in France. Like they're French shoes. And I had never seen them before. Or I'd never noticed them before.
That's right.
And now I'm sitting in my first day back. I'm in the Tim Hortons. I'm like, there are those shoes.
And we were talking about it,
and
too.
I was like, I'd never seen these.
So, because there's a part of the brain, the RAS, the RAS, and it stands for reticular activator system, that gets actually turned on to that. And the way to do that in your life is through auto-suggestion. So you have to come every day, twice a day. First time you wake up and before you go to sleep, because when you're going to sleep and the time between you go to sleep and when you wake up, that's when it goes into your subconscious mind. And I know you did this because I told you, like, what are you looking for, Luke? You're like, I want to do more deals. I was like, that's not good enough, because if you're doing 2, I'll get you to 3. Is that what you're really looking for? So it's not more that you want. I need you to tell me the fucking number. And then you have to not only repeat it. This is where most people give up. They repeat it. I want to do 400 deals a year. No, that's not how it works. You have to feel the feelings of how it will feel when you do those deals, because that's when you start to put out that vibration, because the feelings is what the universe will get attracted to. And like will attract like in this situation. And so it's very important to take that strategy of what you want, repeat it to yourself daily, twice a day. It's easy. Do it when you brush your teeth in the morning and at night. Feel the feelings. And then now you can start to put a definite plan into place like you did.
Well, Luke, what's your why? I feel like you have a strong why.
Yeah.
Like why you're doing it. And I think I know the answer because I've heard you say it, but maybe it's changed over time. Yeah. But you came to us with a very specific goal.
Yeah, so you brought up something 4 minutes ago. You said something along the lines of, I'm forgetting it now. But
okay.
No, but what's your why?
But no, it's something. It clicked in my brain.
Shoes?
No. It was. I'll tell
Amazing
you my
Jazzes?
why. Oh, you said that I'm willing to do anything, even if I shouldn't be doing it. You said that I still jump on the opportunity to say yes anyway, and then it comes down to, because if I were to fail, it wouldn't be that bad. Fail, because I've gone through tougher times in my life where as long as it doesn't get below that, I've already made it past that bottom point. Anything else below that, that's unknown territory to me. That's a little scary. Anything above that, I'm good. I know I'll figure it out. And that bottom point was, and I told you guys this behind cameras, that I remember when we first came to Canada, there was 3, I was born in the Philippines, but when we first came to Canada, I was probably 3 years old. I was born back home, but I was 3 years old when I kind of remembered things. And there's 3 of my families all living in one house. There's a little over 15 people in this one house. 1,500 square foot house, right? We were all sharing bedrooms, not anything else, just bedrooms. 4 people in a bedroom. And I remember we were so fucking poor. We had to finance an $80 TV. We didn't have $80 in cash to get a TV, a little tube TV like this big. Yeah. And it was like this wide in the back because it was a
make payments on the $80.
We had to make payments on the $80. And then every time my mom still works. My dad still works. Every time I see like my mom in a picture with her coworkers, she's a lovely lady. And like, it almost makes me sad that she's still there. It's like, it's my job now to honor my parents, to get them out of that. So I think that's like the very bottom in terms of a why. But someone,
that's a strong why. A
That's
lot
a
of
strong
people
why.
don't have it as clear as that, right? And I don't even know if I have it as clear as that, but I think something like that is why you work so hard too. Like that fuels your ambition.
Well, it must, because when like I don't think it's a secret amongst like our internal crew. I put you through the ringer sometimes, you know, like people know how I kind of speak to everyone else. You're the only one that I speak differently to, from the perspective of like,
I got thick skin though.
You got 100. Well, if you do, I know you do. You have to. I'm making sure that you do, because I know that what your why is to Laura's question and to your answer, but I'm also not going to try to let you get away with shit, you know? And so
you want his work ethic to match his ambition.
100%.
Like you're the one that came in all cocky saying, I want all this stuff.
Yeah.
Now let's.
Well,
like,
there's
are you
only
gonna do
one
the work?
person that in all honesty, that's ever come into my world that can even come close to me in selling stuff, and that's Luc. And he's actually going to be better than I am. I know it. I know it for sure, because he actually came with the ability from a technological perspective. He grew up with this shit, so I didn't. And so I had to, that was my learning curve. Luc had no learning curve around technology.
Well, give him 10 years and then he's going to be like,
Well,
shit.
no, I know new technology is going to
Now
come,
all
but he's
those
going to
young
pick up
kids.
on it. Like look at AI, for example, right? Like
yeah,
he's already kind of on top of what to do. And so in terms of sales, I know that he's the only one that can take a little bit more of a pushing. I'm a little bit more harsh with him. I'm a little bit more like, you know, come on, let's like cut the fucking bullshit, right? Where it's never bothered you, man. You've never said to me ever in the 3 years that we've been together now, coming on to 4 years, like, hey, Jas, why do I need to do it like this? You've never asked, and you've always done it. And I have a feeling that's because you remind yourself of the why. You also got the results. If I was full of shit, like, we would have known, we would have figured that out already. You wouldn't have been able to get the results. You would have caught me in my lies in terms of not being able to get you results. But I think it is that why, to Laura's point again, that keeps you going every day.
Completely. So somebody asked me on another podcast as well, is like, who was your hero growing up? What motivated you? Who was at the top that you looked at that made you want to be like them? I said, I never had a superhero. I've always had a villain. And that villain was myself, but the opposite version of who I am today. Depressed, lazy, smoking weed all day, alcoholic. That, I was like, that's the image. That scares me. That image of myself being like that scares me. And ultimately, it's disrespectful to the people that brought me here. My parents my dad, when he was in the Philippines, there we were poor too. So here, like, just that $80 tube TV, that was a blessing to them.
Yeah.
My dad, when his grandmother passed away, had to carry her dead body in his hands, walk miles just to bury her. We didn't even have money to bury. He had to do it himself. So for my parents to bring me here and to become that villain that I mentioned to you guys, that image of myself that was, in my eyes, just disrespectful to my parents, it's just disrespectful. They did all that for me to come here, be lazy, unsuccessful. Like, they deserve the world. I'd be selfish if I didn't look after them. Mm-hmm. So that's part of it. And now it's just, I'm too deep. Like, you're relying on me to make the calls. You're relying on me to firm up deals. Fitigu, the workshops, realtors want to hear from me, right? So if I don't show up every single day, not only am I disappointing myself, I'm disappointing the people that are expecting me to perform.
Yeah,
the
that's
people that
important.
actually
It's funny.
believe in
I
me.
think if you want more in your life, sometimes just putting in yourself in a position where you're responsible to other people
And accountable.
to other people. Like, sometimes that's like, people say, well, Laura, I don't want to get up in the morning. Like, 3 of us, we don't have a choice, because you're relying on me to be at work. You're relying on me to be at work, and vice versa. Like, we're all relying on each other. So it's like, I don't have the option. Like,
That's-
if, you know, there's no
so
choice.
funny.
So you just get up and you do it, and you kind of work through the hard times just because you have no option.
I think that's what, like, there's a magical / cross-pollination happens when you start to grow a team too. Like, and I don't mean like a team of realtors, I mean a team of like staff, because it doesn't matter. We have work to do. You just got back from France. We have to kind of catch you up on a bunch of stuff that we're doing in the projects that we launched, and we have content to shoot. It wasn't necessarily, it's a Monday morning today. And I would rather at times have done something else than done this podcast, as much as I love you guys, but it's easy, right? Like, guys, we can do this later on. But I knew Jas was coming from somewhere. You know? And even Nikki was like, fuck, Nikki's in the office with us. It's not a big deal. It's not. And then he's coming, and I'm like, okay, I could if I really call Jas and just tell him, hey, Jas, sorry, bro. Like, you know, you got to come back later, or we're going to do it tomorrow.
You inconvenience other people.
Exactly. So just sometimes, just to your point, Laura, like, it's why personal trainers work. You know, coaches help, trainers in general in sales. It helps because you're actually accountable to someone else, right? And
you don't want them to be disappointed.
You don't want them to be disappointed, right? And so there's a lot of real estate agents who sometimes don't even want to take the leap of faith of coming to a training company. I'm not saying that from our company's perspective only, but maybe sometimes just partnering up with someone in your office. And I don't mean like real business partner stuff, like literally, like maybe you can just hold each other accountable that you're both going to show up at 8:30 in the morning, but by 9 o'clock you're not fucking around at the water cooler and shooting the shit about the Leafs game the night before. At 9 o'clock you're making your first phone call, right? And at 10:30 you're shooting a piece of content. Like, I think that's what worked with you and I, Toe. Like, neither one of us were super gung-ho per se to start shooting content, but it was like, okay, Laura, I'll hold the camera for you, you hold the camera for me. We both kind of suck at it.
Yeah, what was I gonna let you down and be like, I'm not doing it?
Exactly, right? And because you kind of had somebody to do it with, it makes it a little bit easier. I mean, from a sales perspective now, Luc, I think, you know, you mentioned it, you're accountable to all of us. We're also accountable to you, right? Like, I can't go pick a project, you do a webinar, and then Laura doesn't fucking perform when it comes to getting the clients through the 10-day due diligence period, right? So that's why it's so important for people to understand. You don't need a big team. You don't need, 15 people on staff or anything of that sort. Just having one other person that you can maybe be accountable to can be a massive help.
Yeah.
I feel like we kind of brushed over a little bit of the transition of Luc coming on to kind of intern with us to then working as the assistant to then getting into sales. I feel like that period, like, we were talking about him going home and listening to sales calls. It's not like we brought him on and he was just listening to sales calls. He had a full-time job with us that he needed to do first and foremost.
As the assistant.
Yes. And you were very strategic, I feel, with how you used your time. Did you come in with a strategy, or does it just appear that you were strategic?
Yeah, something that, honestly, people nowadays have no excuses. Because to consume information back then, it was reading a book, taking notes, et cetera, which is why, like, the OGs of the world, like the Warren Buffetts of the world, they still read because they've had that habit, because back then they didn't have audiobooks. Now we do. So nowadays you have zero excuses. Whenever I want to learn something new, I just listen to videos on YouTube. You can listen to it on the car. So now people have zero excuses, because what most people end up doing is playing music in the car. That's not productive, right? And a lot of the shit they say in the music anyway, it goes into your subconscious mind. So when you're hearing, "Oh, I'm dealing drugs, I'm gonna kill this person," that all the crazy shit. I mean, my age demographic, that's the stuff they listen to. Whereas on the flip side, I'm listening to your calls. I'm listening to your masterclass. I literally did that, and it was also perfect timing. Not to say COVID was a good thing by any means, but during COVID, I had nothing else to do. Yeah. So all I did was listen to that stuff on blast while typing emails.
Yeah. Like prior to COVID, like we had Luc running around like a chicken with his head cut off.
100%.
Luc, go do this. Luc, go do this. And I gotta say, like, the attitude in which he took those tasks. These are not fun tasks. Like, I've been there. I've done that work. I know what it feels like to be the person that everyone's calling out to kind of like go get the coffee and, be a gopher, essentially. It's not the most admirable kind of work. Like, you don't feel that way, but you always did it with a smile on your face. There was never any pushback. There was never an eye roll, and you always put that work first. But what I think,
hang on one sec, Laura, and I want you to go back to that. I just want to mention it because he did it for fucking 12 to 13 hours a day, every single day, 7 days a week. Not once did he ask me for more money. And not to say that by asking for more money, you're doing anything wrong. It was the consistency of doing it for 12, 13 hours a day for a 2-year period. It's insane, how long he did it for as well as, and he didn't work for free for the 2 years. I think it was after 6 months, I was like, okay, I know I'm going to lose you. I'd be an idiot not to start paying you now, even though I think we talked for a year. But it was the fact of how many hours he put in a day. And I think that's very important for people to listen to, because some people say, well, I did it now for 3 months and I didn't get anything. Well, your income is in direct proportion of the value you're bringing into the marketplace. And at that time, he still wasn't bringing a lot of value, because the marketplace, at least his direct marketplace that he was working with, which was myself and you, we didn't think that he still should have gotten paid more than his salary after that 6 month period. It was after the fact that he did it for that 12, 18-month period.
Well, I think a lot of people, they come in, they'll say, well, I'll just be an assistant so I can learn. So they come in already with the attitude of taking, which is fine. Like, I get that we all want more, and you're playing chess a little and being strategic. But Luc never, it's not like Luc would come first thing he would come first thing in the morning before hours, when he knew it wasn't even, I'm not even being paid to be here, because he knew you showed up early.
Oh, yeah.
So he would pick your brain early. How smart is that? What he didn't do was come in at 9:15, 15 minutes late, and then say, so I was listening to the thing last night, and then start picking your brain and not doing his work. And then he would work the full time, and then it would be like while I was eating lunch, Luc would come in and say, Laura, do you have maybe 15 minutes? I can pick your brain while you're eating lunch. Of course, Luc. And then he would come in. So he was very strategic about how he used his time and when he would try to get the information to help further his career in the right direction. But it was never really during the hours in which he was being paid to do his job.
Can I ask you guys something? Mm-hmm. So a lot of people do bring that kind of value to me, for example, and then sometimes I just still don't want them to pick my brain, because I find that their charisma, their personality, it's not there. It doesn't sound, I don't know how to describe it. I just couldn't resonate with you. So it's just whatever. I'll give you your information, but I can't go deep. You're not striking a chord to my soul. How much would you guys say my jokes played a big part in that? Because
I think you're one of the most
rip jokes 24/7.
100%,
you didn't right off the bat, in fairness, but you were, you came in a little cautious.
Did that help?
For sure.
Did that help?
I think always connections help, right? And it's not to say that your specific personality is the only personality that would work. I think your personality worked with us.
Yeah, true.
It was a vibe
I don't know
that
if
we appreciated.
Yeah, 100%. I think for me anyways, at the start, I didn't care for your wittiness and your jokes, to be honest with you, because to me, it was like we have a job to do.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you were brought on to help us do something. In fact, Laura almost said something that I think I maybe cut her off. If you started with the jokes too early with me,
would have turned you off?
Well, it probably would have turned me off, because I would have been like, I've had that around me a lot.
Yeah.
I've had the wittiness and the jokes, and they're fun, and it's awesome.
And it's but we need to
know
work.
what I mean? Yeah, it's we need to work. We have a lot of stuff to do, especially with your role. I needed somebody to do the stuff that I couldn't get to, but it was very important. Right?
So it was just a bonus then.
I think it was a bonus. I think it was the amount of respect you just showed.
For me, that's
I
what it
truly
was.
just think it was I can't put my finger on it. You were just so respectful of our time and of you made us feel like we were doing you a favor a bit, and people like helping other people.
Yeah, look,
you never made me feel like I owed it to you. And that made me want to give it to you more.
Oh.
Yeah, right? I don't know where you got the respect thing, and so I don't know how to teach that to somebody. And I have a feeling from just watching people that a lot of it has to do from our parents. And so unfortunately, I can't bring value to everybody here, which I'd like to try to do, because some people weren't grown up with two parents or whatever it was, or a certain situation. But I think it comes from there, because I could definitely talk about it with you two, because I kind of know your guys' story, right? And your parents they instilled that in you. But I knew there was something with you for sure, because when the day that you drove me home, and then you came and ate at my house, and not a lot of people are coming into my home, and I'm not gonna sit there and feed them like that and make sure that you get to sit with my family. But the two people that are very uber important in my life are my two older brothers,
right?
And you ate with them that day.
Yeah, I broke bread with
and
them.
And so did with my mom and my dad. But it was my two older brothers who after said, "Oh my God, that's like you, he's 19. That didn't seem right. He didn't seem like he was 19 years old. He's very mature." And that's where I was always lucky, because as a 15-year-old, I was hanging out with 25-year-olds with my eldest brother.
Yeah.
As a 10-year-old, like I was hanging out at 20. I went into the first club I ever went to, I was like 12 years old. My brother snuck me into a club a couple of times, you know? So I was always hanging around older people. So when you become 20 and 25 and 35, it's like, holy shit, this is like deja vu. I've been here before because I heard the conversations of those older people, right? And so I felt like you kind of had that. You always speak about your brother, who's kind of, what do you always say? Like he's wiser. What's the saying around that? He's wise beyond his years.
Yeah,
That's
wise beyond his years.
We're hanging around you too much because our sayings are
Like,
getting
what's
bad
the
now.
saying?
But it's important. I think that's the lesson, actually. Now it came to me full circle. If you don't have that kind of setting at home, like I feel for you, but that to your point earlier, Luca, like there's no excuses. You can get around that. You can get around, if you're a younger person, you can get around older people, spend time with older people. And maybe the first setting you get to might not be the right setting and so on and so forth. You need to get to 15 places. You know, Gary Vee always talks about going to fucking retirement homes. I'm not going to say that I've ever tried that or done that because it would be bullshit, but maybe that's a strategy. Like go pick the brains of the 82-year-olds and see like what they've learned. Right. And maybe that can kind of help you go through, because you had to Laura's point, you had a lot of fucking respect, man. Like the way that you went about picking our brains, which I just now know sitting here now at the time of this recording, spring 2023, like you legit are a couple of steps away of leading the full pre-construction division of REC Canada, which does 150 to 175 deals a year. Like that's significant. Like we do a lot of business. And I, along with obviously Simos, and I kind of started it with our third partner who passed away. I took it to the level that it is. I'm not trying to, again, impress anyone, but I know what I brought to the fucking table. And then when Laura came on board, her and I really massaged that system. And now it's become the beast that it's become, this division, and a 22-year-old is actually leading it. Like, how does that actually make you feel, bro?
I think for a split second I do feel good about it, but at the end of the day, just this is not me just talking about it. I feel like it's just something I genuinely believe. It's because it has nothing really much to do with me. Because to your point, you guys built this thing. I'm just finding my way in to try to help take it over and leave you away from it as much as possible and make your job as easy as possible during the 10 days and all of that administrative stuff. I think that still all the credit goes to you guys. All the credit goes to God, because a couple of things that were totally out of my control, like when I first called you, it sounded like I was confident. I was beat up. Like I was damn near on the verge of depression, but for some reason something came out of me that eluded confidence, where really I know in my head it wasn't confidence at all. I remember that day. I was in my bedroom. Because I didn't have an office. I was in my bedroom with this old ass computer and like an Android phone that was like cracked in half, and I made that phone call. And so a number of different factors that are totally out of my control
and about
are the ones to take.
And about confidence for people, right? I think it's very important. People think that you get confident first and then do. Unfortunately, and this is like the dumbest thing in my opinion, but it's true, you do first and then get confident. You don't go buy confidence. You don't like just get it from somewhere. You just actually do the thing that you're trying to do, whatever scares the shit out of you. So if you're watching right now, and I don't know which camera, yes, this one right here, and you're scared shitless of investing into real estate, building a business, growing a team, asking to kiss the girl, asking to kiss, wanting to kiss the boy, do it. And then you'll get confident, because you'll come to realize it really wasn't that scary. It's the old adage of riding the bike. It's like you're scared, but then you get on it, you might fall, and it's like, oh my God, okay, I didn't break anything. Let me get back on the bike. And so I think to your point, yeah, you were saying like I wasn't confident, right? But you just still did it.
Yeah.
And then you got confident. Now you got to hear my boy on a phone call. And like I'll legit put any salesperson in this world up against Luc. I will have that much confidence. He's not going to, get everyone to, use our product or use our service in terms of From the Ground Up or REC Canada. But I know with full confidence now, because he's done it so many times, and that's where it comes from. It all comes from the repetition, that you will have a high probability of getting somebody to use our product or service.
Now, I think when people have, so we touched on fear being a thing that holds people back. Another thing that I think people holds people back is maybe the excuse of like, I don't have time. And I think Luc has a really great story of like just being smart with his time when he was working for us as an assistant, and you had him with the task of reaching out to people to get you on podcasts.
What was that?
Right? Didn't you hire an outside company to do it for you?
That was smart. Yeah.
Like, so, okay, so Luc's role was to reach out to people, send emails to get Jas on podcasts. That was part of his job. But Luc was like, look, I have no interest in this.
If this didn't work, I would have fired his ass.
This isn't like interesting to me. I don't care about this. It's not going to help me with my sales career. So how smart is this? Because you only have so many hours in a day. So he outsourced that part of his job to somebody else, and unbeknownst to us. And then we were like, yeah, but Luc, when do you have the time to be reaching out? Like, are you doing these things? And he's like, yeah, I'm doing it. And then we finally found out how he was doing it.
Because he told us.
This fucking kid.
And it was working. And what I said is if it didn't work, I would have fired him, because I would have thought it was him who's doing it anyways. But the results were coming in. So you and I were.
Well, he was overwatching it.
Yeah, 100%.
So now he just bought back, 2 hours of his day where he could be picking our brains and asking us sales questions or whatever it was, right? Maybe saying, Jas, let me make a call. No, I'm still going to get the work done. So like just getting like creative around your time and how you do stuff. Like, I think you did that really well.
I'm impressed that you remembered that, because I almost forgot.
You were looking at me like, what did I do?
Yeah, well, the story behind that is for the first couple of months, I did do it on my own. And when I refined a system that I knew it worked, like we got some of the biggest names on the podcast. And we got you on, I think, first year 72 podcast. Like we got you on.
Yeah, there was about 72 that I was on.
Something
Jas
ridiculous.
knows. He knows how many featured ons we did.
Yeah, and after I kind of refined my system, I was like, okay, let me create a video tutorial, outsource it to a VA for $4 an hour, and then boom.
So smart.
Now, I never had any extra money. I was only getting paid what you guys paid me, right? And it's not like I was generating extra money.
So now you're actually out $4 an hour.
Because I was probably making $10 an hour. I don't know whatever you guys paid me. So it's just like, well,
No,
now
it was minimum wage. I'm just making sure. Exactly.
Like.
Yeah. Disclaimers. Yeah. Go.
You just pay me in cash. But anyway. But yeah, I mean, even then, like, even though I had no money, I was still pouring out money that I didn't even really have, and I made it work out.
But it's the investment in yourself. Like, you knew, like, this is not a good use of my time. A better use of my time would be XYZ, whatever it is. And so I'm going to spend the money. I'm going to invest in myself right now. I might not even really have the money to do it, but it's not like you were bringing your lunch in every day. Like, you weren't going out buying lunches.
He still brings his lunch in
Yeah, he
every
still
day.
brings his lunch. So, just getting super creative about
Well, I
how
think,
you spend your time.
and in terms of time hack, I thought what you were going to mention, and I'm sure a lot of people do this already, but for the ones that don't, because he actually got me on it, and I think you do it now too, Toe, is listening to the things at 1.5, 2 times, like 2x on YouTube and
even then,
podcasts and stuff like that.
you were
Like
doing
on
that right from the
Audible,
bat. Yeah.
on Audible, all I do is listen at 1.5 time.
Yeah.
And at first it's weird.
And you think, how could you
listening to it.
possibly pick up anything?
But you do. Like,
And
your
then you
brain
adjust,
gets trained over it. Like, are you still doing that? Or
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, to our point earlier about being as effective as possible at time watching videos, listening to audiobooks, et cetera, people don't even do that in general. When I do it, it's 2x speed. So if it's a 60-minute video, I can get it down to 30, right? So, and if you think about that, if you're not even listening to audiobooks and consuming information, and people like us are doing it and trimming it down in half, people in this world are going to get fucked. Like,
Yeah.
this is the competition people are up against. There's 80,000 realtors in this city. And then there's people like us doing the things that they're not doing, but also doing it in half the amount of time. You're going to get screwed. So yes, I still do it, to answer your question.
To your point, when you're talking about that there's 80,000 realtors, what are you doing? So let's give some tactical advice to our brothers and sisters in the industry now. Like, what are you actually doing when you're on phone calls that's actually giving you the results you're getting?
Yeah, completely. I think, for one, you get the confidence from doing it as many times as possible. So do it as many times as possible, 50 times a day, just to even get the confidence in the product that you are speaking about. And 2 is ask as many questions as possible. because you can't just start sell. I've seen it countless times, and it makes me cringe. I've heard sales calls of people in our office just going straight for the pitch. You haven't even asked enough questions. Why would I sell you a coffee when you've probably had 3 already today and you don't need any more? So I'm not going to spend the next 45 minutes pitching you on this coffee. You don't need it. You might need some water because you're dehydrated. So let me bring you the water. So ask questions. People don't ask enough questions. People don't get to know their clients enough, right? Why would I pitch someone a pre-construction condo investment when they already have 5 in the funnel? Maybe they need some cash flow in their portfolio. Let me talk about that.
So are you trying to do that as quickly as possible? Like, how are you finding that out? You're talking to somebody, you're talking to Jas, we don't know him, and you're giving him a call. What are you actually saying?
First question I always ask is if they are more inbound, I would say, what exactly was it you're looking for? You registered for this project. You registered for this property. What are you looking for? That is the very first question I always ask.
And now on the flip side, it's, let's just say Jas didn't come inbound, but for some reason, like he didn't actually call us or email us, but now you have to go outbound to him. What's the difference there?
I would just say, hey, listen, like, obviously you connected with us in the past. Just kind of want to know where your headspace is at in regards to the real estate market.
So I love it, right? I love what you've done in terms of both times I asked you that question. Number one, you guys can tell he didn't fumble through his shit. So you can tell that he knows his stuff. And look, there might be the odd person that gets onto this couch that for some reason the team didn't do the due diligence on, and or I fucked up, and it's 99% of the time it's on me, that there might be somebody on this couch that I didn't do the due diligence on, and they're not really who they're made out to be on the socials or wherever. That's not the situation here. Luc knows what he's talking about, and you can tell because he didn't fumble through it. I put him on the spot, and they all know that I don't pre-rehearse our podcast conversations, and so the open-ended questions both times. If it was an inbound or an outbound, in both situations, what you said is what. Open-ended question makes people actually talk. They can't answer a yes or no if they're a normal person. In the second example, you used where's your headspace at? Again, they got to start explaining themselves, right? Mm-hmm. The person that you're talking to. So now where do you take it from there?
Okay, so assuming it's an outbound and I'm saying where's your headspace at? If they're not interested, okay, no problem. Just so my team and I are respectful and mindful of your plans, when do you think you'll be ready? That's it. Another open-ended question. I'll be ready in 6 months when I get financing on this, or next year when my career is stable, whatever it is. They'll talk, follow up with them. Note, if they say follow up with me in 12 months, follow up with them in 6 months, and then confirm if they're still good to talk in another 6 months from now. That's just a side note. Let's just say they are interested. Yeah, like where my headspace at? Oh yeah,
I'm so proud.
I sound like you guys.
That's like you're a little kid.
Yeah. I sound like you guys because I took that all from you guys. But let's just say they are interested. Yeah, where my headspace is at, I'm interested in doing da 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 da, and then boom. Whether that's booking an appointment with our senior coach Tyler, whether that's going straight for the inviting to an event that we're hosting, whatever it is, that'll kind of dictate the conversation. Open-ended questions. To my point, I do more asking than I do telling.
Yes, that's awesome. I've heard you say in the workshops, because now along with myself and Laura, I mean, you do a session at the workshop, Elto does a section at the workshop, and then I obviously do it, and Tyler does as well. I've heard you speak about, and it's something that I actually want to talk more about in my content from a sales perspective, of the importance of knowing your product.
100%.
Okay, and so for me, the joke that I always ran when I'm doing podcasts was that I sold shoes for a living, and then I always add that what I add to that is the joke of not the Al Bundy type. So people get that who watch Married with Children, where he sold women's shoes. I helped sprinters and marathon runners. And the reason I've always mentioned that is because the importance of knowing your product.
Right.
So that's where I learned the importance of it. Like, holy shit, I still till this day know if Jas or Laura told me, hey, I want to run 2-3 times a day, I can say, Laura, like, let me see your feet. Jas, let me see your feet. Bend down a little bit. I can tell like which shoe I could match it with. Like, I really knew my product. And then I stopped just talking about it. But when you, like, I hear it every workshop we do now, you actually talk about it. Are you hearing things in what's known as the bullpen, like in our office, or like outside, out and about, like agents or salespeople and sales professionals in general, just shooting the shit, not knowing their fucking product, or what is it? Like, and I want you to lead into how you actually do it as well.
Well, I mean, that's just how I started, because I hope at this point in this podcast, people watching this kind of get a feel for the kind of value I bring to the table. But imagine you just putting me on the spot and said, Luke, what do you say in there? And I go like, let me check my notes, and start stuttering and shaking. Like, you're not going to trust me. The people watching are not going to trust me. If I'm selling to someone a $600,000 condo and I don't have the answers to their question, they're not going to trust me. $600,000 condo. You have to put 120 grand down to make this investment. That's a lot of money, right? And to trust a 22-year-old that doesn't know what they're talking about, the deal's done, right? So I had to know my product in order to get paid in this world.
And not just your product, also all the other options.
That were exactly the cash
What do you
flows
mean
of
by
the...
that?
Well, like
Other
just
properties?
the other projects that were out there. So
Yes.
not just your product and like knowing that, obviously you have to know what you're selling, but like also knowing how your product stacks up against other product.
Yeah.
Right. And then outside of the pre-construction route, like it's not like you're, you know properties in the areas and what you can get for rents, like present day. So like knowing those numbers and stuff help you as well. Because then when someone says, I don't know, really, should it be a pre-con? I'm thinking about doing a resale. You can speak to that stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's important for like a technical sales aspect, but it's also important from a moral aspect, because like what we said about earlier, like it's disrespectful for me to not work because there's people relying on me. It's disrespectful to my clients to not understand what I'm giving them because they're relying on that, me knowing where their money's going and how that's going to work and what their risks are.
As a real estate agent, I think especially the ones when are that are investor savvy. So there's not a lot in my experience now of 19 years. I've seen the 80,000 mark kind of be talked about, like in terms of 80,000 real estate agents in the GTA. It's about 126,000 in all of Canada, and I think there's probably like 1% of that is investor savvy, meaning that they deal with investors, right? And what I come across a lot of watching, listening, the Q&As that we do at the workshop, they're always asking me kind of the similar questions I always get, is they don't actually ask for the sale, okay? So you went through the process of asking the questions, the what, the where, the when, the why, the how, all of that, okay? How do you actually now ask for the sale? How do you actually make that happen on the spot?
Yeah, so if we're referring to pre-construction, because we sell a lot of
about
different things.
pre-construction,
If we talk
yeah.
about pre-construction, because a lot of agents watching this that are wanting to learn how to sell pre-construction, I just explain the process. The first thing we need is what we call a reservation form, and then I explain to our clients how commitment like this is. So they're not putting all their money down, how easy it is. So what I ask them is spend 5 minutes, put in your reservation form, list your top 3 choices, and if and only if the strategy of pre-construction works for you, then we can talk about next steps. And I know by saying that, if they do put it in, they want to know about next steps.
Right.
And they want to know about the strategy and get their questions answered. And then after that, we just talk about the actual selection of units and talk about the process.
And so you've kind of made it into a system per
Completely.
se, where you know what questions to ask, you get people talking, and then you try to kind of match, if we have a product that matches what their objectives are, is when you kind of move to the next step. I love what you use as an example about not selling somebody a cup of coffee when they don't need it, right? It's the old videos that we've seen of like Jordan Belfort, like and Wolf of Wall Street, sell me this pen, sell me this pen. But every smart advisor in sales professional, if you're a pro, you know that you don't try to sell somebody a pen that doesn't need it. You find out if they actually need a pen, and if they don't, you ask if they know, if that person might know somebody that might be in the need of a pen, or if you can follow up with this person in the future because they might need a pen. And right, and cutting down the time. I know Laura, like, she's heard that before. Like, if somebody says 12 months, you call them in 6 months. That right there is something that was even taught to me probably about exactly actually 19 years ago from my mentor in real estate, right? I always talk about Simon. He passed away. He taught me that in real estate, whatever someone says when they say follow up with me in 12 months, cut it in half, right? Just to check, hey, are we still on track? But the fact that you're still talking, like, I know how proud he is, because 19 years later, We still have somebody still using that system. That's the importance of systems. That's the importance of success leaving clues. Understanding that somebody's already been down this path. We know that works. If you follow up with somebody at a certain time, you're going to have a much higher probability of them doing business, which means more deals, which means possibly more introductions, which means more sustainability in this business. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
You guys agree? Look, I know the team's giving me the time right now. We could go on for hours. We do it anyways naturally at the office. We made it a little bit more formal per se in terms of a podcast. Luca, you're going to be joining me a lot more. Because I know the viewers are going to love and the listeners are going to love what they heard. I mentioned I have 2 older brothers, and I've never really had a younger brother, and you've been the closest to me in terms of having a little brother who I actually want to give way more than I possibly have already in terms of it would be an insult for me if you weren't better than I was in sales, because that's how much you mean to me. I love you. Watching your growth, brother, it has been one of the most gratifying things in my professional career. You know, obviously, like my family and all that stuff is pedestal stuff, but watching your growth has been unbelievable. Laura, if people haven't yet caught on to the Laura show, I urge you all to go to YouTube. It's Laura Stewart TO on YouTube. Yep. Obviously on Instagram, you guys probably already follow her. But it's all the same. But I, in the same sentiment, watching your growth from a content perspective is insane. It made me so happy today that the team in one of our chat groups was like watching all the growth in your viewership and all that shit. And I'm like, holy shit, it's all finally kind of starting to come to fruition. And so I appreciate both of you. Love you guys both. We are, for everybody who's watching, make sure that you start following and connecting on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Everybody who's listening right now in your car, make sure you download the app. If you're an iPhoner, just go into the App Store. If you're an Android person, go into the Play Store, type in Jas, Jas. It's not Jazz like Luke said. It's Jas space Takhar. Download the app. It's absolutely free, because then you can see the handsome and beautiful people that are actually on the couch with me. Other than that, have a kick-ass week, and let's go
crush.
Thank you, guys.
Crush. All right.